My goodness, we're a talkative bunch tonight. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Nice to see you all here tonight. We've got a very busy weekend coming up. I'm very excited to announce the return of what used to be the annual Brotherhood Kebabathon for Yom HaAtzmaut. I'm very happy to see that again. I missed it the last 2 years. So that's at 11:30 on Sunday, so be prepared for a delicious kebab lunch. At 1 p.m., Sisterhood is presenting what looks like it's going to be a very interesting program, which will be in person here as well as on YouTube, An Afternoon with Trudy Strobel. She used art to slay the demons that haunted her as a young child in a Nazi labor camp. So we'll be looking at some of her work and hearing from her, as well as the person who wrote a book about her. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm glad that the meeting that we had that afternoon got canceled so I can attend. Coming up next Saturday is an exciting event, the adult B'nai Mitzvah that they've been waiting for and waiting for and waiting for since January is finally going to happen. Richard Kaufman, Sandy Strauss, and Mila Zerlin will be celebrating their B'nai Mitzvah. They've worked long and hard for this, and trust me, it's not easy when you're an adult. I did it, and I was even younger. So I'm looking forward to that as well. 10 o'clock next Saturday the 7th. Be sure to attend and support them for all their hard work. So okay, come on, brain. My tongue got ahead of my brain, sorry. Again, on May 14th, we're having our Gala 65th anniversary celebration. I hope you've all made your reservations. It should be a fun evening. Number one, we get to dress up. Remember dressing up? Number two, there's a comedian. He's a family comedian, so no dirty jokes, I'm assuming. And we should have very good food and lots of good company. So if you haven't already RSVP'd, please do so. Oh, last time is tonight, so as soon as we're done with services, get to your computer and RSVP on our website. Tonight we're also commemorating Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. We always say never again. Never works, does it? So not only do I want to remember those of us of the Jewish faith, as well as the others, the Romani, the homosexuals, the disabled who were killed. But let's also think of those poor people in the Ukraine who are fighting so hard for the safety of their country. They don't deserve this. I also want to be sure and thank our staff, Rabbi Mark, Cantor Ken, and Dr. Ray at the keyboard, and as always, our techies, Phil Carey, David Youngman, and Chris Jastrock. Thank you all, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much, Dina, for the announcements. And yes, not only the kebab on Sunday, but the last day of our religious school taking place on Sunday as well. as we commemorate Israeli Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut, comes next week. For those of you joining us at home on our YouTube channel, now would be a great time to make sure you have some challah, some candles, a little bit of Kiddush wine or juice or your other favorite Shabbat beverage set aside so that we might share in that in a little while. We're going to have some readings and a candle lighting ceremony in commemoration of Yom HaShoah before we get to our Shabbat candles. This evening as well, we have Shabbat greetings from Jeff and Wilma Shear. I wish to acknowledge that Jeff is a past president of our congregation and a member of our temple board. And we have some virtual we have a Shabbat shout-out, from Shari and Neil Rosen on the marriage of their daughter, Julie, to Mark Cornejo. So mazel tov to the bride and groom, to the Rosen and Cornejo family. Wonderful. Always good to celebrate those happy occasions. Indeed, on this night, we are drawn into one of those awkward situations of history. We gather in the joy of life, the ability to gather together in spite of the continuing pandemic, the ability for us to come to the end of a week and to celebrate Shabbat and the joy of that Shabbat while at the same time commemorating a great tragedy amongst our people, Yom HaShoah. And so it is, I don't know, it might be part of the Jewish schizophrenic mind, you know? We can hold both emotions at the same time. We can have joy and we can have sorrow at the same time. And indeed, this is what our tradition teaches us, that on the road of life, we are going to drink from the cup of joy and the cup of sorrow, and sometimes that will be at the exact same moment. There are some readings and meditations that are part of our service today that carry forward that same idea, the idea of finding joy amidst tragedy, the idea of finding strength and courage during the time of tremendous oppression and violence. That is perhaps the resiliency of the human mind and the strength of our souls to be able to rise to those challenges. So on this evening, we commemorate this tragic event in the history of not just our people, but of humanity indeed. Many look to the Holocaust and ask, where was God? I look at the Holocaust and say, where were human beings? The world knew. Everyone knew. It was easier to ignore, perhaps because it was in a foreign country, it was dealing with internal affair matters. But as a human family, we recognize that hatred recognizes no boundaries. Anti-Semitism does not respect political borders, national borders, and so it's important for us to recall. And so this evening, we will begin with silence. Instead of an opening song to welcome Shabbat, we will begin with silence. It is the silence of death. It is the silence of life. It is the silence after destruction, the silence before creation. There are times when songs falter, when darkness fills life, when martyrdom becomes a constellation of faith against the unrelieved black of space about us. There are no words to reach beyond the edge of night, no messengers to tell the full tale. There is only silence. It is the silence of Job. It is the silence of our 6 million. It is the silence of memory. Let us remember them as we link our silences together. As we commemorate Yom HaShoah this evening, We will kindle these 6 lights in memory of the 6 million Jews that were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. May the memories of these righteous victims of hatred, intolerance, bigotry, and anti-Semitism know the peace that was denied to them in this world. And in the shadow of God's presence, may their memories inspire us to banish hatred from our hearts, our families and communities, and indeed all the world. And let us say, Amen.
Ashrei hagafrur shenisraf veitzit lehavot. Ashrei halehava sheba'ara besitrei levavot. Ashrei halehavot sheyadu vehidgin lechalodo bechavod. Ashrei hagafrur shenisraf levaitzit lehavot.
We light this yellow candle to rekindle God's flame, to shine His light upon the world once again, to sanctify the memories of the millions of souls, to honor their prayers and all their lost goals. We bless their existence by being alive, to light this yellow candle as proof we survived.
As I light this yellow candle, I vow never to forget the lives of the Jewish men, women, and children who were martyred and are symbolized by this flame. They were tortured and brutalized by human beings who acted like beasts. Their lives were taken in cruelty. May we be inspired to learn more about our 6 million brothers and sisters as individuals and as communities, to recall their memory throughout the year so that they will not suffer a double death.
May we recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the splendor of their lives. May the memory of their lives inspire us to hallow our own lives and to live meaningful Jewish lives so that we may help to ensure that part of who they were shall endure always. May their memory be a blessing for us all.
I'm grateful for the Brotherhood for their powerful readings and candle lighting. Written in pencil on the sealed railway car. Here in this carload I, Eve, with Abel my son. If you see my other son, Cain, the Son of Man, tell him Silence. Only silence, waiting for our reply, all of them waiting. 3,300,000 Jews lived in Poland before the war. 3 million of them were murdered. 2,850,000 Jews lived in Russia, and more than 1 million of them were murdered. 1.5 million Jews lived in the Balkans and the Slavic countries, and over 1 million of them were murdered. Germany, Austria, France, and Italy had 650,000 Jews. Half of them were murdered. Rhodes and Cyprus had happy, thriving congregations. So many were lost to hatred and bigotry. Our brothers and sisters were murdered everywhere in the days of destruction. They died in cities and towns, in villages and fields. They died in the night and in the fog. They died between dawn and dusk. They died by fire and water, by poison, by gun. They died alone, but we will not forget them. We will remember them. We turn to the lighting of our Shabbat candles. We sort of have a mixture of lights this evening. We have the sad lights of our Yizkor candles, our memorial candles. And we are about to kindle the lights of joy of Shabbat. But what these candles have in common is the flame itself. It's very fragile. It doesn't take much to extinguish any of these flames. A soft breeze or a hard blow. It is a reminder of the fragility of human life. It is the reminder of the fragility of life itself and the world around us. And it is a call to us to do what we can to protect that very light, the light of life, the light of joy, the light of justice, and the light of truth. This is what we kindle with our Shabbat lights. And this is what we are called upon to protect and to cherish, not only on Yom HaShoah, not only on Shabbat, but every day. I invite Joteus to help us with the lighting of our Shabbat candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, source of all being, who calls us to holy acts through mitzvot and inspires us to kindle these lights of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, John. It was the cold winter of 1944. And although we had nothing like calendars, my father, who was my fellow prisoner there, took me and some of our friends to the corner in our barracks. He announced that it was the eve of Hanukkah and produced a curiously shaped bowl and began to light a wick immersed in his precious but now melted margarine ration. We think about that for just a moment. To live on a ration of margarine. Before he could recite the first blessing, I protested the waste of food. He looked at me, then at the lamp, and finally said, "You and I have seen that it is possible to live up to 3 weeks without food. We once lived almost 3 days without water. But you cannot live. You cannot live properly for even 3 minutes without hope." That is what prayer is. Prayer is an expression of hope. Hope in a better tomorrow. Hope in the strength to face the challenges that life has thrown at us. Prayer is the ultimate expression of hope. And as human beings, we have been doing that for generations. I invite us to rise as we are able for our call to worship, the Baruch Hu.
La 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 Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed La 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 la
My father owned a huge men's clothing store in Berlin. And he worked all his life to build up this store. And he told me how his store was looted and utterly destroyed on Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. The police hunted for him, my mother and 2 sisters, to deport them to a concentration camp. But a righteous Gentile risked his life to hide them in his attic, until my father and mother and sisters were able to emigrate to America in February of 1939. On Kristallnacht in 1938, my uncle was rounded up with other Jews and deported to a concentration camp where he was later murdered. My grandparents, 5 aunts and uncles in Berlin were also later deported to concentration camps where they were likewise murdered. My mother was the sole survivor of her family, shattered like the glass on Kristallnacht was my family.
Amen. שיתממיה עם כל זה אני מאמין עם כל זה אחכה לו בכל יום
I believe in the sun even when it is not shining. I believe in love even when feeling it not. I believe in God even when God is silent.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leholam Va'ed Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Va'ed Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
We may be seated. How my family survived the camps. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Nietzsche said this about other things, not this. How did my family survive the camps? Were they smarter, stronger than the rest? Were they lucky? Did luck exist in Dora Nordhausen, in Auschwitz, in Bergen-Belsen? How did they survive the selection? My mother spoke good German. I see her now at the staging camp. Her wit, her keen wit, dancing around the SS like her young Slavic feet. She was young and good-looking, thin but good-looking, and the SS liked Ukrainian Fräulein. On the cattle car to Dora, to the chimneys of that camp, my mother rode with her family intact, thinner but intact and ready for work. How did my family survive? Survive is not the right word. I am alive, my father would say. Alive because I did not die. Others died. Keep breathing, he encouraged me. In difficult times, keep breathing. Suffering presents us with a challenge to find our goals and our purpose in life. That makes even the worst situations worth living through. And sometimes it takes courage. Courage and hope to find your way through that suffering, as our ancestors did so long ago.
Mi chamocha b'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osefel, nora tehilot osefel. Malechutecha ra'ovanecha, bokeyam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Zeili, Zeili, anu ve'ameru. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed.
As Nazi German trees, civilians and soldiers began to oppose the situation and began armed struggles. These groups of civilian and soldiers often formed and organized themselves in areas that would provide cover, such as forests, swamps, and mountains, because they knew their forces could never compete with that of the Nazi regime. Almost all of their resistance was centered on sabotage and on ambushes, specifically in the transferring of military supplies, often bombing rail lines, bridges to prevent movement. At the same time, Jews in the camps, a makeshift Passover Seder here, a musical presentation there, anything to maintain a sense of dignity as a Jew. Indeed, the stories of the survivors talk about the Shabbat services that would spontaneously spring up on a Friday night. How they knew it was Friday night. Somebody was keeping track and huddled in a corner singing softly. They would sing songs of Shabbat, surrounded by cruelty, by violence, and by death. Holding out that hope and expressing courage, they would yet again be able to observe a Shabbat.
Israel, otile olam, eshameru bnei Israel et hashabat, lasot et hashabat ledorotam berit olam, ki sheshet yamim Asadonai, Asadonai, et hashamayim, et haaretz, ve'et haaretz, ve'shameru bnei Yisrael, et hashabat, lasot et hashabat, ledorotam berit olam. Shabbat vayinafat Shameru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat La'asot et HaShabbat L'dorotam berit olam.
In a way, we are the inheritors of their hope because we celebrate Shabbat. We celebrate Shabbat in freedom. We celebrate Shabbat in relative peace and in safety. And on this Shabbat, we connect ourselves to all of our ancestors, those who survived the Shoah, those who perished in the Shoah, those who came long before the Shoah, a link of tradition and history and culture and peoplehood that spans over 4,000 years. We rise as we are able, as we continue with the words of our tefillah.
La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Adonai sifatai tiftach Ufi agi tehilatecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה, אתה גיבור אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה להושיע.
We'll end there. We may be seated. First, they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Pastor Martin Niemöller was arrested for his condemnation of the Nazi actions and spent 4 long years in concentration camps. My mother, Martha Driesen, hid a Jewish woman for over 4 years during the Holocaust because she and Lily Wolf were partners. Their business was destroyed on Kristallnacht, and those who tried to stop the Nazis suffered also. Many non-Jews suffered because they tried to help. I will never forget the stories my mother and Lily told of the hiding, the later escape to America, and the suffering that they experienced because of the cruel dictator, Adolf Hitler. A light snow was falling, and the streets were crowded with people. It was Munich in Nazi Germany. One of my rabbinic students, Shifra Penzias, told me that her great-aunt Susie had been riding a city bus home from work. SS stormtroopers suddenly stopped the bus and began examining the identification papers of all of the passengers. Most were annoyed, but a few were terrified. Jews were being told to leave the bus immediately and to get into a truck around the corner. My student's great-aunt watched from her seat in the rear as the soldiers systematically worked their way down the aisle. She began to tremble, tears streaming down her face. The man sitting next to her noticed that she was crying, and he politely asked her why. She said, I don't have the papers you have. I am a Jew, and they're going to take me. The man exploded with disgust. He began to curse and to scream at her. "You stupid, stupid woman," he roared. "I can't stand being near you." The SS soldiers quickly approached and asked what all the yelling was about. "Damn her," the man shouted angrily. "My wife has forgotten her papers again. I am so fed up with her. She's always doing this to me." The soldiers laughed and moved on. My student said that her great-aunt never saw that man again. She never even knew his name. Sometimes shalom can be made in just a moment with a very simple but brave and selfless act.
Lechol hashalom Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam V'tov Beinecha Levarich et Amecha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך שלום רב על ישראל עמך על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים
We offer our prayers for peace, for all whose shalom, sense of peace, sense of wholeness, sense of well-being has been shattered, even disturbed by the challenges that they are facing, challenges to their health, their bodies, their minds, challenges to their well-being. May all who are facing such challenges be blessed on their journey, a journey that will bring them to a refuah shlema, a return to the shalom that they desire, the wholeness that they seek, health amidst family and friends, strength and courage to face the challenges that they are facing. I invite you to share aloud the name of a loved one who is in need of this prayer of hope and of healing. Baruch atah Adonai Rofei HaCholim. We praise you, O God, who helps us bring hope and healing to those who are in need. And let us say, Amen.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שברך אמותינו, שרה רבקה לאה ורחל. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Misheberach Avotenu Avraham, Yitzhak, v'Yaakov. Misheberach Avotenu Sarah, Rivka, Leah, v'Rachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
Our communal prayers during a worship service are only part of the dialogue. We share words and reflections from our tradition, from our people's experience. We share hopes, fears, dreams, and desires. But there are other words that need to be heard. These are words that rest deep within ourselves, in our hearts, in our minds, in our souls. Perhaps one of the biggest tragedies of the Shoah is that people stopped listening. They stopped listening to the words of their neighbors. They stopped listening to the words of their hearts. They were very easily distracted by the messages of the media, the propaganda of the Nazis excelled in its dehumanizing of Jews, people with physical differences, people with mental differences. And amidst all of that noise from media, the soft murmuring sound, the kol demama daka that Eliyahu, that Elijah heard on the mountaintop, that soft whisper of conscience was drowned out in hate. And so let us spend this moment listening to those words, the words of our hearts, the words of our souls that call to us, that teach us and remind us we are all one human family. What takes place in one country will absolutely affect another country, if we didn't learn that from the pandemic. And so let us listen and draw strength from the words of our hearts, the melodies of our souls, and the strengths of our conscience. We pause for a moment of silent meditation, or such other prayer as the heart may prompt.
לעולם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crush of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
Thank you very much, Cantor Jaffe, again, as always, for the music that you bring, especially the music you have selected for our Yom HaShoah commemoration. Dr. Ray, as always, a pleasure to have you accompanying on the clavinova. It is very difficult to try to conceive of the Shoah, the Holocaust, in any kind of real way, those of us who have not experienced it. How do we come to grips with the number 6 million? Well, maybe it would be helpful to think of the following cities: Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim, Norwalk, Fullerton, Downey, Whittier, Buena Park, Yorba Linda, La Habra, Hacienda Heights, Cypress, Cerritos, La Mirada, Brea, West Covina, La Palma, Artesia, and Santa Fe Springs. And the inhabitants of all of those cities, all of them being murdered over a 4-year period. It's a mind-numbing number, and the institutionalization and the industrialization of death that the Nazis brought. It is a very difficult thing to grasp, and of course it makes it easy to wish it away, to try to deny that it happened. But it did. And although we say never again, our world seems to be inhabited with dictators and despots who choose very much to wreak havoc. From Pharaoh, Hitler, Mussolini, Caesar, Stalin, Pol Pot, and maybe even Putin. And who's next? These characters continue to repeat themselves in our history. And the innocents are the ones who suffer. Edmund Burke said, all that is necessary for evil to succeed is that good people do nothing. Actually, he said good men, but we will pardon him for his gender-based language. That was the language of his time, but it is true. Bullies succeed when good people remain silent. And that's exactly who these people were and are. They are bullies. But they are bullies that come with powerful armies. And all that needs for them to succeed is for good people to do nothing. Which is why Yad Vashem's Righteous Gentile Project is such an important message. The numbers keep growing because the people who did what they did because they thought that's what people should do. They never thought there was anything special in it. How many people had the courage to stand up to the Nazis? We might think it a small number. It certainly could have been larger. But the over 27,000 who have been recognized is a staggering number of people who said no to the Nazis. And the countries where these people said no is likewise staggering. Over 7,000 Poles said no to the Nazis. Over 5,000 people of the Netherlands. 4,000 from France. Ukraine, over 2,500 Ukrainians said no to Nazi hate. That's incredible. Belgium, Lithuania, Hungary, even in Germany, 641. And there's a story I'm going to share with you tonight that is the ultimate story of the power of saying no to bullies. Even in Russia, 215. The Czech Republic, 119, and Japan, 1. An amazing story. An amazing story. Who was allied with the Germans? Who was allied with the Nazis? Japan. People like Aristides Mendes, who was the Portuguese ambassador to France. He was forbidden by his government, forbidden by the French government to issue visas to Jew, and nonetheless, 10,000 Jews from Bordeaux found their way out. He was recalled to Portugal, unfortunately. And what happened to these people who said no to the Nazis is an embarrassment to the countries themselves, because he was later stripped and ostracized of his rank, and he died a pauper in 1954. 10,000 Jews survived because of him. Oskar Schindler. If you haven't seen the movie Schindler's List, go see it. It's an awful movie because it is so powerful and so true. Pastor Marc Dondel, he was hiding Jews in Le Chambon, France, little village, hiding them, giving them false papers. People in the village would whisper about a pastor who was saving Jews under the noses of the Nazis. And this pastor said, I would tell them that they should be careful talking about it because I could get in trouble. The villagers didn't even know that it was their own pastor who was doing this. Incredible. Raoul Wallenberg, many movies made about Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish diplomat. Likewise, tens of thousands of Jews receiving passports out. Shinui Sempo Sugihara. This story is amazing. He's in Lithuania. He's the Japanese consul in Lithuania. There's a whole book written about it. It's called the Fugu Plan. Fugu is the Japanese word for blowfish, which, if prepared properly, will not poison you or make you sick or kill you. The skin, the flesh of the blowfish is poisonous. And so you have to know exactly what you're doing to extract the meat and not the poison. And of course, it is a delicacy. And so the Fugu Plan is the name of this book. 2,500 Jews escaped Lithuania because of this man, who was also recalled by the Japanese government and sent home to Tokyo. But until he left, he had a stamp. It was a Japanese stamp, and the Nazis didn't read Japanese. So he's stamping the papers. Well, a lower officer confiscated his stamp, so he could no longer stamp the passports to get the Jews out. So he made a new one. And it said carrots, because the Nazis didn't read Japanese. And he continued stamping the passports, figuring when they get to Japan, they'll figure it out there. But at least they're out of Lithuania. And that's when he was recalled to Tokyo. What a brave, brave man. All of these, over 27,000 people. Mustafa Janegba Hardaga, we met the daughter on our 2013 trip to Israel. She had emigrated to Israel. This is Sarajevo, 1941, and they sheltered Josef Kavilio and his family, who survived, immigrated to Israel, and the son is one of Israel's Supreme Court justices, all because of this family. And in 1994, when Sarajevo was attacked, Israel sent in troops to grab this family and to get them out, and brought them to Israel. The daughter Sarah, we had a chance to meet. She later converted to Judaism. The family, Mustafa, Muslim, sheltered a Jewish family in Sarajevo. And then when the crimes against Muslims were increasing during this attack in Sarajevo, Israel stepped in. Hendrikus and Marta Snapper, we had a chance to hear Hank Snapper many years ago here at Temple Beth Or. In 2012, Hank spoke here. They sheltered the Hartog family. There were 7 members of this family. Now, Hendrikus was the mayor of his village. And guess who moved into the mayor's home and took over the top floor? The Nazi soldiers. Because this was the mayor's house. And as a show of authority, we, Nazis, are moving in and taking over the first floor, while they had Jews in the house. Cleaning lady was an aunt. The children were nephews displaced. Every day. Can you imagine that? Every day in your house, Nazis upstairs and Jews there. The villagers all thought that Hendrikus was a Nazi collaborator, and they kept sending him threatening notes. He couldn't do anything. As the Nazis were going to round up the Jews of the village, sorry, we don't know who they... Well, you've got your census list in the office. We will take that tomorrow morning. That night, mysteriously, the office burned. What a brave family. How about an entire country saying no to the Nazis? This one gives me goosebumps. King Christian the 10th, The Jews of Denmark are ordered to wear yellow stars. And so King Christian tells his people, our brothers and sisters are forced to wear the yellow stars. We will all wear yellow stars. And they did. And they did. And when the Nazi says, doesn't matter, we're going to find the names and we're going to grab them, they were smuggled out of Denmark. All the Jews. In fishing boats. To Norway and to other countries that had not yet been occupied by the Nazis. Incredible. 7,200 Jews saved by one king and his country. It is possible to say no to bullies. And that is the lesson. But the most amazing story of them all are the wives of Rosen Street. During February and March of 1943, the Gestapo rounded up 1,700 Berlin Jews who were married to German women. They were to be deported to the labor camps and east to Auschwitz. These women said no. And they marched on the Gestapo jail where their husbands were held. And they shouted at the Gestapo, "Release our husbands." Periodically, the Gestapo would fire some bullets overhead to try to disperse the women, who immediately came back and protested in front of Gestapo headquarters. That's chutzpah. The men were not deported. They were held in a nearby prison camp for the duration of the war. And at the end of the war, they were united with their wives. It is possible to say no to bullies. It takes courage, conviction, and a sense of righteousness that you know what the other person, the other country, the other government is doing is wrong on all levels. This is the story that I take from the Shoah, because it is the only hope for us to end this kind of stuff. It's going to take decent people to say no, to rein in these actions of these bullies. And we are witnessing the silence of the good and the righteous in what is taking place in Ukraine. We say never again, but humanity has failed to learn the lesson. I had the horrific pleasure of touring Auschwitz and Birkenau. And at the end of the tour, there on the rubble of one of the crematoria, I met with our 25-year-old tour guide. Quite emotional from the experience. I identified myself to him as a rabbi. And I asked him how in the world he can step into hell every day and do what he does. And he said, well, number one, I'm a history buff. I love history, and this is the worst of history. But he said, look around. The place was packed. Lots of tour groups, children, school groups, adults, people from a whole slew of countries, identifiable by the language they spoke or their dress. and their attire. And he said people are coming to Auschwitz in large numbers over the previous decades. Humanity might finally be learning the lesson. And that's why I do what I do, he said. Because humanity has to learn the lesson. That's my hope as well. That's why we commemorate Yom HaShoah. That's why we talk about it. Others are tired of hearing it. But until Uyghurs are safe, until gay and lesbian people are safe, until the Ukrainians are safe, until immigrants are safe, until people of color are safe, until people who speak a different language are safe, humanity has not learned the lesson. And so that's why we continue to talk about it. And those who are tired of hearing it, then let them speak out against the hate that continues to pervade this country and the world. May we take the lesson of these 27,000 heroes to heart and find our own voices to speak out. Ken yehi ratzonenu, so may it be our will. Before we move to the Aleinu and the Kaddish, we're going to share a special El Malei Rachamim, which was written specifically for the victims of the Shoah. Many of us have lost family members in the Shoah. And if you have, I will invite you, you're more than welcome to come up here onto the bima or from your place. Before we share the El Malei, I will invite you to share aloud the names of family members who have perished in the Shoah.
Both my parents are Holocaust survivors. My father lost almost his entire family. My mother lost most of them. They were basically left orphans, and they ended up in Israel, where I was born. Until about 2 years ago, I knew about these people, and some of them are they're related to me. I mean, they're my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my father's siblings. And 2 years ago, a thought came to me that no one's ever said Kaddish to these people. No one's ever read their names. And quite frankly, I didn't even know their names. I just knew about them. So I took it upon myself to find my roots. And through Yad Vashem and other resources out there, I found records of who they were, their names, their ages, and what happened to them. I only found 41, and I know there's 2 or 3 times this amount that I can't even find testimonials or records. I know about them, though, and I'm starting to find their names. So this list that I'm going to read to you is a living list, and it's growing. I have a list of 41, and if you don't mind, I would like to read their names, okay? Hannah Youngman, Herta Youngman, Willie, I'll say their German name, Jungmann, Dolek Jungmann, David Wasserberger, Leonora Gottesdiener, Elias Wasserberger, Mila Wasserberger, Zelma Wasserberger, Wilma Wasserberger, Bernard Wasserberger, Julia Wasserberger, Frieda Wasserberger, Helena Mannheimer, Edda Wasserberger, Anna Chania Wasserberger, Zachariusz Mannheimer, Jacob Mannheimer, Erna Wasserberger, Franja Gottestein, Dushka Gottestein, Adolf Gottestein, Maria Wasserberger, Maria Landsberger, Esther Zollmann, Fela Zollmann, David Zollmann, Olga Rubenfeld, Zelma Rubenfeld, Emilia Malka Moses, Sarah Bela Silverbach, Rachel Hovers, Yehoshua Hovers, Libale Hovers, Shimon Moses, Manya Wasserberger, Morik Wasserberger, Sonia Wasserberger, Schindel Wasserberger, Isaac Wasserberger, and Vilush Wasserberger. These are aunts, cousins, uncles, grandparents, okay? These were not random names that I'm reading to you. Thank you.
David. Thank you very much, David. Are there others who have names they'd like to share? Joe?
My parents were German Jews from Berlin. My parents left Germany in 1936, went to what was then Palestine. The rest of the family says, "Where are you going? Are you crazy? We're Germans." My father's sister, husband, 2 girls, we don't even know what happened to them. We were in Israel when the rabbi was there too, Yad Vashem, could not find any records at all, no was. They got caught probably someplace along the way. That was the end. So my parents were the smart ones. They saw what was coming, my dad did. And I'm still here today.
For which we are grateful. I will invite us to rise as we are able for the El Malei Rachamim.
Shochen b'meromim u'metzei merchucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina u'kedoshim v'torim kezor harakia שתחת מנוחה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו הקידוש Hashem, Baal HaRachamim, Yastirem Beseter Knafecha Le'olamim, Utzeror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmatam, Adonai Nachalatam Yanuchu Shalom al mishkavam v'nomar Amen.
God, full of compassion, whose presence is over us, may the souls of our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews find the safety and rest denied them on earth under the sheltering wings of your presence, with the holy and the pure on high who shine as the lights of heaven. Master of mercy, cover them in the shelter of your wings forever and bring their souls into the gathering of life. It is the eternal God who is their inheritance. May they be at peace in their place of rest. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
We continue with the words of our adoration, the words of the Aleinu. I'll invite us to read these words together. Let us now praise the Sovereign of the universe and proclaim the greatness of the Creator, who spread out the heavens and established the earth, whose glory is revealed in the heavens above, and whose greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, there is none else. Therefore we bow in awe and thanksgiving before the one who is sovereign over all, the Holy and Blessed One.
אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, those who live on in our hearts, our memories, and in the place we call Olam Haba, the world to come. We call to mind one for whom we are observing the Shiva period, Gerald Kramer, the son of Lily Kramer. And Lily, our hearts go out to you in the immediacy of the death of your son. We hope that you find some comfort here amongst friends and family during these difficult times. To his name, we link the names of those whose yardsites have occurred during this past week: Georgia Zohar Hackett, Sherry Levine Dapron, Diane Lavute McNiff, Mary B. Levinson, James Elliott, Charles Dengrove, Betty Goldberg, Abraham Goldberg, Alice Ockman, Anna Streisand, Arthur Tarnopol, Rabbi Ken Weiss, Don Ripley, Diana Gimbel, Betty Maltz Kurtzman, Gloria Altman, Marcy Jean Norton, Maxine Brown, Jacob Cohen, Max Lehman, Harriet Siegel, Joe Griffin, Maurice Haber, Bessie Gottgoff, Leon Harry Weiner, Rita Cybulski, and Marjorie Asnes. To those names, we link the names of those for whom we are observing the Kaddish period: Malcolm Dipperstein, Mark Bornstein, Leah Levine, Vicky Emery, Sheldon Zinberg, Evelyn Levin, Gloria Austin, Dee Dee Ginter, Dorothy Bernard, Molly Shartoff, Erica Cherie Barnes, Kaylee Goldstein, Craig Wilford, Fred Fink, Joyce Ulibari, Ralph Goldstein, Marvin Asness, Joel Jaffe, Norma Lippy, Claire Phillips, David Kaplan, Helene Lieberman, Laura Cutler, Marty Hershkowitz, and Dottie Roth. If there's a loved one whom you are remembering, I invite you to share that name at this time. To those that we have named aloud, and to those that we keep named in the quiet places of our hearts and memories, we link as well the names and memories of the men and women of our armed forces who've given their lives for our liberties and our freedoms, those who've given their lives for our safety here at home, members of our police, our firefighters, other first responders, the members of the Israeli Defense Forces who've given their lives for the hope of peace, and the almost 1 million Americans who have died from this COVID-19 pandemic, and just sadly this past week, the 772 Americans who have died from gun violence. As well, of course, we include our 6 million brothers and sisters and all who continue to perish due to hatred and intolerance. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be for us a blessing and a source of inspiration as we share a rather unique version of the Kaddish, one that intersperses the names of the camps, the ghettos, and the places where our brothers and sisters were murdered. Yit Kadal Lodz, V'yit Kadash Gurs, Shemei Rabbah Warsaw, Ba'alma Divra Chirute Bogdavonka, V'yamlich Malchute Ravensbrück, B'chayechon u'v'yomechon Vilna, u'v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael Treblinka, Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen chelmno, Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam u'lalmei almaya levov, Yitbarach v'yishtabach Belchek, V'yitpa'ar v'yitmamam Maidanek, V'yitnaseh v'yithadar Mathausen, V'yitale v'yithalal Birkenau, Shemei Kudusha Berichu Babiyar, Le'ela Bergen Belsen, Min Kol Birchata v'Shirata Dachau, Tushbechata v'Nechemata Auschwitz, Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen Theresienstadt, Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shmaya Buchenwald, V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Shtothof, Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom kluga, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. So be, boy.
Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
We may be seated. It is part of our resiliency. It is part of our call to find ways to always sanctify life that I think drives the heart of us as a people. And so, amidst the joy of Shabbat, amidst the sadness of Yom HaShoah, we nonetheless consecrate life with the words of our Kiddush and share what is the Jewish response to hatred and to acts of violence, the word l'chaim, to life.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי באנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. Chaim.
There is juice of wine and available for you when you enter the social hall. Our rabbis teach us all the world is but a very narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to be afraid. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar ma'od, v'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. I invite us to rise as we are able as we conclude this service with a song of hope and reality. Yes, the world can be a scary place, but let us not be afraid. I invite us to rise as we are able. If you are comfortable putting your arm around the shoulder of someone next to you or holding the hand of someone who needs to be reseated, please feel free to do so as we conclude our service.
כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, והעיקר לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר לא לפחד כלל. יום לי 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 לי
And before we conclude, so that when we enter our social hall, we might begin right away with partaking of food and sustenance. We share the motzi here, giving us the opportunity to join together in some oneg joy.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon.
Bon appetit. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
You know, Shift? I went to school that I heard that story, but I didn't know that was from her family. You also know her connection, right?
No, I think I came across the story. I don't know.
Ever heard of the background radiation?
Yeah.
Her